That's a horrible way of designing a system.
All right, let's go.
Yep, let's do this.
So, guys, we're back this week. We'll keep the conspiracy talk to a minimum. We're going to dive right in here. So we've got movement talk today.
Oh, there's some goose.
Oh, we do? Okay, we got to touch on one.
There's one.
Not conspiracy
It's
talk.
not a conspiracy, but you guys are going to love this. So I need to talk about this. Deja gets an email yesterday from IND. IND is the Dutch Department of Immigration.
Yep.
So when they immigrated from the US, you guys picked up citizen cards, whatever the fuck that is. So Deja has an appointment to go get hers. Obviously, it's being cancelled because of all the corona stuff. So they send a letter to Deja, which I have right here. And as a name, it says Dejanira Corona in capital letters, I kid you not, all caps, Vizcaíno de Anda. They put Corona as her middle name in capital letters. I'm looking at it right now, still not believing I'm saying this.
Yep.
So, two things. Either it's a fuck up somewhere, which I'm guessing, but there's always the conspiracy possibility that this is the most racist shit I've ever seen, where they call the Mexican woman Corona.
We're like, well, this sounds like a Mexican name, so we'll just put the Corona.
So, no, but like in capital letter, it says Dejanira Corona Vizcaíno de Anda.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so good. Like, I'm going to put that on Instagram. Like, people need to see this. Like, someone has to get in trouble over this. This is the official letter from the IND. It's so good.
Heiress to the Corona beer fortune.
Yes, exactly. In capital letters, obviously. Oh, can you imagine in the US if you call a Mexican Corona as a middle name? Oh, that'd be so good. Oh my God. Anyway, so that one is funny. I'm posting it on Instagram. I'm going to make the IND famous. There you go.
So we've been... well, not even recently, but you kind of have always been getting questions about torque, internal torque.
Oh yeah, that started like whatever the fuck. My first talk about internal torque, actually, I watched it the other day, was on the Bicep Opener. I see internal rotation back then instead of torque. That has to be 6 years ago.
Yeah,
I have to check.
That was. God damn it, I don't even remember. That was always coming out like just before I remember when we had first met in California for the Massonomics podcast. And that at that time, you had just switched from rotation terminology to torque.
So at least 6 months before that then.
Yeah. And that was, I don't even remember when that was, 2015, 16,
it has to be
15.
At least 5-6 years ago. Yeah.
And then, because I remember for me being on the outside, I hadn't been to a seminar yet. I had heard none of the bones of that discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
So at least with the podcast here, we have the opportunity to revisit the subject and kind of clarify and go deep a little bit more. Where in the fuck did this come from for you?
So,
how about this? Let me start with this. Was there a problem that you were trying to solve?
There was no, actually no, there was not necessarily a problem. So, well, yes and no. It started because I had a lot of back then CrossFitters coming to me with shoulder issues, but a very specific type. And so what I was surprised is I always have athletes coming from different backgrounds. Back then, American football player, tennis players, I had golfers, I had jiu-jitsu guys, and you see more or less the same pattern of injuries, but not exactly the same thing. You know, the back from being only one, one side, like golfers, they only rotate the same way. So that creates some weaknesses here and there. But you go like, okay, those patterns I've seen. And then there was a type of shoulder injury, not injury quite, but shoulder issues that just kept popping up. And I was like, this is so weird. And I started to have some more CrossFitters coming to me for that. And I started to see a pattern of the lats not working, but everybody's in the traps and relating to the movement pattern. Right. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so that...
So you saw these problems though as a person who knows exercise and training in the body, you can see still what muscle should be doing something on a one-to-one basis, right? This muscle should be getting used during this exercise and this during that. And did you start to then take those patterns and just kind of layer this system over top of it that makes it easier to...
Right, because it's almost the other way. It's like when you see top athletes, they all create their own issue almost in a different way. Right, so it's a saying that, I can't remember who said that, but I got it from, but can't even remember who said it, but it was like, we all do things the right way differently, but we all do things the wrong way the same.
Okay.
Right. And then suddenly I saw the CrossFitters, regardless of leverage, of proportions of limbs and stuff like that, gender or whatever, coming up with the exact same problem. And I was like, but that's weird, because if you look at other sports, other athletes, even within golfers, like depending on the leverage, stuff like that, you won't see exactly the same thing. There's usually like they have a tendency to put the stress somewhere else and everything.
Yeah, because there's enough random probability to where things kind of end up everywhere.
But yeah, so it moves.
But here everything boils down
in CrossFit, it's
the same place.
Always the same.
Okay.
Always the same every time. I was like, that is very strange, right? And we're talking like, and the percentage of people doing CrossFit having the issue too. Golfers and back, that's fairly common, right? But then we're talking like, most CrossFitters I talked to were coming with the exact same shoulder issue. I was like, at least there's a pattern. Yeah. I don't know what it is at the time, but at least there's a pattern there.
Yeah, at least you all are on the same page.
Right, we know there's an issue, right? Yeah. And it's not, again, not an injury per se, but suddenly like, ow, and I start to ask, and it's 40 minutes to raise my shoulder in the morning, and I'm like, ooh, okay. So I start to dwell a bit more into that. And I've come across the whole conversation about external torque. At the time, Kelly Starrett was doing the Ollie lifting seminars as well, explaining external torque for the shoulder.
And they were using it as in the term of rotation, right?
No, torque.
Okay.
Torque. So he's the one who came up with the towel.
Okay.
In Ollie talk, and he said, this is what torque is. You're much stronger this way. When you start turning the towel, it's a much stronger towel. If you look, so the idea of torque was like, look at a rope. It's if you have a single thread, right, it can break. But if you make the thing in an elliptical system, it becomes much stronger. You notice that's what happens with bullets.
Yeah.
You make them rotate inside the barrel because then they go faster. Galaxies, like everything is elliptical in nature. It's never linear. You'll notice, right? And so I was like, right, so torque is the same way, which means a muscle is not, back and forth in a linear way. To create tension, there's always a rotation associated with the pull or the push. Okay. So it's almost elliptical, and that was the idea of torque.
Okay.
Right, and so at the time they were saying basically shoulder, everything is in external torque. And then they were saying that for pressing and then for squatting, it was always external torque. And so I have two issues with that one. First of all is, how can anything be only external torque? Like that's not, like you're gonna have to load at some point. So if you want to push in external torque, no matter what, you're gonna have to load in internal torque.
Yeah.
Right. But all we're talking about is external torque. Like everything has to be external torque. But I'm like, but loading is as important as pressing or doing so. You know what I mean? Like, so how come, like if you only do external torque, at some point you're gonna run out of space.
Yes.
You can't just keep turning the hip or you know what I mean? I was like, that doesn't make that much sense. And then my second issue for the shoulder, for example, was, but if I look at movement in nature, like when I punch, I don't punch creating external torque. Outside of the Chinese Kung Fu movie, you never punch, you don't
start palm in and finish palm up.
Yeah, exactly, right. That's not, damn it. So you don't create because they're always talking about this, about creating that, they're creating about external torque created through external rotation. That's what they were showing at the time. So first, and by the way, on that, there's another problem is just because I create external rotation doesn't mean I create external torque. So I was like, but that's not true either. I can create external rotation while creating internal torque, which I'll get to in a short while. So I was like, you know what I mean? Like there's many issues with all this. And from a system perspective, it made no sense. You cannot just do external rotation. For example, you'll end up running out of space.
Well,
like how far do you take it? Like until your arm just spins?
And plus the thing you have to remember too, from a training standpoint is you can't just be external torque, because you need, like I use the example like a cordless drill.
Yeah.
It has to be in your hand, held solid with tension in order for that torque.
Otherwise,
and if your hand is weak, what happens when it binds up over here? You have too much tension. It'll snap you. So you need solid, at least
something,
a foundation on the
exactly.
inside,
And so,
which is not going to be internal torque at the moment, but it's got to be tension to base
something. But so at the time they're explaining that the problem is like, so the joint is supposed to do is that mobility versus stabilization. That's the typical physio argument. But to me, right away, I saw functional segregation.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, but plus on top of it, like we're talking about catching, for example, let's talk about catching
functional segregation. Let's make sure we clarify what that is again. So that
right. So that means it's taking things, it's looking at correlation. Yeah. It's taking things from a system and decomposing it in independent units.
And assuming that they have the same value back to the system.
Right. And then, from there, well, yes, but exactly. From there, you see a correlation between this and that. Mm-hmm. Right. The only point of the correlation is to understand that this unit is part of a larger system.
Yeah.
If there's no correlation, it does not belong in the system. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing correlation is for, right?
Yeah.
Like there's correlation and causation. One has nothing to do with the other. Correlation is just to say this unit is part of a larger system. Yeah. That is the only thing correlation is for.
So the functional segregation, what we've done is we've taken...
we take and we know.
Taking that, we looked at one thing very focused.
We took external torque. Is it part of the action of the shoulder? Fuck yeah, it is. Yeah, of course it is. Right.
But then we don't want to build that as the foundation.
Right, and then from there we generalize everything based on that, and that's where that's where you fail. In order to take that into the larger system, you need functional integration. It's understanding not just the correlation, but then which one influences which, then that's the whole chicken and the egg thing, and like understanding what the system is about. Mm-hmm. Right, so I'm like, all right, so I look at the system. Right, let's look at functional integration. Functional integration is what? It's for movement, is function of a movement. Right, is what happens when I do a functional movement. Why? Functional movement is not the snatch, is for example, punching.
Yeah,
it's throwing, it's pushing a car, it's swimming, it's whatever. And every single time, whenever I see the arm extending in a pressing movement, mm-hmm. I see tension directed toward the center of the body. Throwing, punching, swimming, every time it comes back toward the tension being directed toward the center of the body, not away from the center of the body like they're telling me to do on the snatch. So, for example, on the snatch, the whole stuff is external rotation plus external torque of the shoulder to catch the snatch. But I'm like, all right, so from a functional integration perspective, all movements in nature go toward where the tension goes toward the center of the body when I extend my arm in a pushing position. So I'm like, all right, so if I catch the snatch, is that a pulling or a pushing position?
Should be a push.
Should be pushing, otherwise the barbell falls on you.
Yeah.
Right, so again, when I say snatch, I don't mean off the floor. I mean like when you catch it, right? So it means like when you catch, if I look, it's a pressing movement. That doesn't mean you're actually pressing the barbell, even if your arms are straight. You're gonna have to push against it. You're not pulling against it. It's just you're going against gravity, basically, right? Yeah. So it's a pressing movement. Yeah. I think we can agree on that one. If you want to get me on semantics, fuck you. But you get the idea, right? Yeah. It's a pressing movement. I was like, well, so if I look at every other movement, I see internal torque, like tension being created toward the center of the body. So I'm like, so are we saying that the snatch is the one movement different from all the others from nature? Right, so if we look at functional segregation, sure. Mm-hmm. From a functional integration perspective, at least we have to go, what does that mean? There might be an issue. And so I keep going further and I'm like, all right, so when I look at a push jerk, mm-hmm. everybody goes out of the chest, but then catches going with the tension back toward the center of the body. You can look at all the Olympic weightlifters and everything. I'm like, so on a push jerk, it's internal torque. But when I catch the snatch, it's external torque. I'm like, okay, but the only difference is the hand position, right? So I'm like, all right, so when do I switch? At one point, do I go from internal torque to external torque? I'm like, but when it happens at that exact moment that I switch, that means there's a dead zone, mm-hmm. right? So that means you're telling me that evolution fucked up and gave us a dead zone where there is no tension overhead.
Should be.
Well, from a system perspective,
it wouldn't make sense.
Right, none of this makes sense. Yeah. I'm like, how come all movements? So at least I'm like, guys, there's an issue with your external torque stuff mm-hmm. on catching the snatch. And so I'm looking at the Chinese, and of course, what I see short head of the bicep, I see the pecs being engaged, and I'm like, so it is internal torque. It is tension toward the center of the body. The only difference is it has nothing to do with rotation, position. Yeah. It has to do with the tension being created. And that's when the light bulb went up at the beginning, going like, oh, tension over position. I get it. Yeah. So it took me years to be able to say that That's simply. But at the time, I knew there was a problem about teaching position, because then from there, the whole idea was to keep rotating the shoulder out in order to achieve what look at a certain position. But that was fucking up everybody, because there are so many ways to do that.
Yeah.
Instead of keeping the right tension, the right muscle engaged, all they did was cheat and use their trap in order to put the shoulder in a proper position, even though that was completely incorrect for the movement.
Yeah, you can go all trap, you can tuck your scapula,
you can engage your elbow. You can engage your pec.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's another, but coming from a world of physio where they have functional segregation, so let me give you an example of functional segregation. If you look on an anatomical chart, what do you see? You see the pec major as an internal rotator of the humerus of the arm. All right? Yep. Simple enough. Right. Okay. So I take I don't have a pec stick here. Okay. I take a pec stick, but it's okay.
We'll pretend I have one.
Imagine taking a pec stick, and what you do, you bend it into a rainbow shape. Yeah. Right. So when you take a pec stick, there's plenty of that, take a 40, 60 kilo. When you bend the pec stick into not a U shape, but a rainbow shape, are you engaging your pecs?
Absolutely.
Fuck yeah, that hurts enough. Yeah. Like everybody knows that, I think. So you're engaging the pecs, right? Do you have an internal rotation of the humerus or an external rotation of the humerus? External. Yeah. Like the arm. So now, do you have adduction of the arms? Of course you do. But what you do is you have an external rotation of the humerus. So adduction of the arm for the pec is functional integration. Is the goal, is not the intent, but is the...
It's it being used in the fucking wild.
Exactly. Right? That's the system. Yeah. The point of the pecs is, one of the point is adducting the arms. But you can do that in internal rotation or external rotation. Like if I bend the pec stick into a U shape, I have internal rotation of the humerus.
But you still are maintaining the pec.
But I'm still engaging the pecs. Yeah. Right. So in both cases, I'm engaging the pecs, even though I have an external rotation of the humerus. So this is where external segregation fails every time. Is he took a movement going and he look at where he attaches, and he was like, when he contracts, I get the humerus turning. Yep. Therefore, the pec is an internal rotator of the humerus.
Yeah, it's a very mechanical way to look at things instead of the
But it's incorrect. No, not even. Because it's a bad mechanical. Because
what it did... It's too reductionist.
It's too reductionist because I don't know if you've ever seen the Leonardo da Vinci models, but you have one rod going left, then the next one going right, and then left and right, and at the end, you have a lever that goes up and down. Yeah. The point of the system is to go up and down. But if I take the first cog, and I analyze that one, the only thing it does is turning left. So if I just analyze that cog, I think the point of the movement is turning left. It wasn't, it's to go up and down. Because I can't take one part away from the system, analyze that part, and make a generalization about that part. That's functional segregation. Yeah. Functional integration is looking at the whole system, goes, oh, it goes up and down. And from there, I can look at the first cog, going, interestingly, this one goes left. But going left is correlation to the whole system. It is not causation. Otherwise, all you understand is that the cog goes left. Yeah. That's the difference between segregation and functional segregation and functional integration. Yeah. Right? And so they kept fucking up on stuff like that, where they just take one piece, like for example, the latissimus dorsi attaches inside the humerus and makes it internally rotate. So people are like, see, it can't be external torque. But I'm like, but that's not the point. The point is internally rotate, but you pull with the arm. And so the entire action of the arm, the bicep and everything counteracts the internal rotation to create external torque. Right, so from an engineering perspective, this makes complete sense.
Well, it's engineering from its natural state, like what is supposed to be.
Any engineer would understand what I'm talking about. The problem is doctors are not engineers because that's not their formation. And so they just looked at the thing going like, well, that's what it does. Yeah. But you know where we come back to? We come back to lactate in 1920 when the guy stuck the electrode in a frog's leg. So lactate being produced, therefore lactate is a waste product. That's functional segregation at its worst. And the medical science is guilty of functional segregation more than any other science out there because they're not scientists, not in that sense. It's not hard science like math, physics and stuff like that. And so they lack the background in that sometimes to understand that you cannot do that. You cannot take a part of a system, isolate it, and try to build an entire new system based on that isolation, on that segregation.
And I think a number of the problems we've seen with the medical system is basically caused by that being extrapolated.
We're seeing it right now.
So with
so
where do you go from here?
Right.
So you have this realization.
Right. So and then I'm like, all right. So first of all, external torque holding overhead is wrong. I'm like, then if it's not external torque, then it's internal torque. I'm like, all right, so then internal torque is what? And so I start to look at the Chinese and I'm like, all right, but mostly what I look at is a gymnast. And I see them going like that upside down iron cross, so I start to look at them, looking videos, and every time going like, how the fuck do you do that? But I know one thing, all of them have their pecs and bicep engaged to the max.
Yeah.
Right, you've seen like, God, I wish I had those biceps and pecs, I won't lie. You know what I mean?
Well,
they look jacked. Yeah.
I mean, use your fucking shoulders for that. I dare you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and so I'm talking to gymnasts, and the first thing they say is like, So then they go internal rotation, but I don't care. I cared about the torque. And every time what they were talking about is, because you see different position of the shoulder, but it doesn't matter. The pec major was engaged every single time.
Yeah.
And what they talk about the most is the connection bicep and pec. That's where the tension is. So I'm like, even when you do upside down, there's a name for it, I can't remember, upside down iron cross, same thing. None of them went to external torque. They all stayed in internal torque. So I was like, there it is. So from there, I look at the Chinese, and that's when I start to look at the pec and the bicep, that's what I see with the Chinese as well. The weightlifter, the Olympic weightlifter.
Well, that's the one thing that I see the most out of the Chinese system. This is just a fucking bird's eye view, is that when I look at the global weightlifting people, the bodies of the people, is that the Chinese weightlifters, one, I think, execute and teach the system of internal torque, maybe not in those terms, but like that is what they are doing and what they are teaching. And the other thing is those athletes have fucking pecs.
And biceps.
That you don't see a lot of weightlifters in a lot of places do. I think it's catching up.
Usually you don't see pecs in Olympic weightlifters because they actually tell you to turn them off, which is a huge mistake. Yeah. And so you see more and more pecs. You see biceps and everything, and you see the Chinese Olympic weightlifter doing exercises specifically for that. So it's not just to look good; it's because it helps. And so, purely Chinese system, 70% assistance work. And so I'm like, all right, so internal torque, right, on the overhead position, and then in my head, I'm like, all right, so I'm right about this. And so I start posting, I look at the gymnast, how do they get better for front levers and everything? It's the bicep opener. So I'm like, ooh, that is, and then I start to do it, and right away I can tell the difference. When I'm here, how much it fucks up my shoulder and goes into my neck. And when I'm here, how much my pec in the game. I'm like, oh, that feels really good. And then I start to feel like the core engaging a certain way and everything. I'm like, ooh. So I'm like, well, let me put some curls in the middle of that. Because just to get the biceps more.
But
I'm like, oh, that works.
The tension between the pec.
And I saw a Chinese Olympic weightlifter, like at the time he was Olympic champion, I can't remember who he was, doing that with cables. You know, like the same, like, remember like that bodybuilding cables, like to get the lower pec and stuff like that, and he was doing curls.
It's that low pull, you lock it in, just squeeze the chest, and then you get to a point where you're there, and you can just do biceps.
Exactly, and I'm like, but let me see. And so I start to I come up with a bicep opener. And so I do it on the bench, with the curls and the thing. So a little bit different, but stolen from gymnastics. I'm the first one to say it.
No,
he was an Olympic weightlifter. He was an Olympic gymnast.
Okay.
Doing it with the cables. And so even the gymnasts were using weights to build the pecs and the bicep. I was like, aha. And so there's an entire concept there that I'm like starting to go, now that's interesting. And so from there, I'm like, okay, so overhead pressing is internal torque. Fine. Now, and I'm eventually I get to the moment where, what about lower body? What about the squat? I'm like, all right, so I'm starting to go at the squat. And what do I see? Again, external torque. And they're saying external torque on the way down on the squat and external torque on the way up. And I'm like, but how the fuck do you... It's like,
what are we loading that against? And also, how are you going to progress that? Because you're only going to build one side of anything.
Right, okay, but and that's my problem too with that, is I'm like, but how can there be only one side? Because what I don't hear is internal torque. Right? Tension toward the center of the body. All I hear is external torque. But I'm like, all right, so let me go back to, let's forget the weight for a second.
All I ever heard was knees out, chest up.
Right. But it was a knees out. Where the knees out was so your knees don't collapse in to create, so you need to create external torque, not to collapse. But I'm like, so you're loading in external torque and then going up in external torque. I'm like, how much torque and rotation can you create only one way? And by the way, what system only exists in one way?
Yeah. What is the deficiency often in knees diving in, caving in?
Right. Do you want me to answer that one already? All right. So most people
specifically before we
okay. So they think that the knees collapse out they're basically telling you to push the knees out so that you don't collapse in.
Yeah, to basically pull
this
the
way
knees
so you
out,
don't collapse in. But first of all, you're assuming that the knee is collapsing because you're not pushing the knees out.
Mm-hmm.
Right, but that's the wrong way of looking at it. Again, like you're assuming that the system only goes one way. Either you're pushing out or it collapses in. Those are the only options. That's not true. The reason the knee is collapsing, we see it all the time, and then I'll explain for you guys how to do a test, is that you lack the inside head of the hammy, you lack internal torque. So since you don't have enough tension being created in the inside head of the hammy, what they call a semi-membranous, right? You have to go somewhere else to create tension.
That means, therefore, the joint is going to displace to shorten that range until it can find that tension.
Well, your body is going to find tension somewhere. Yeah. Like, remember, like the system is not, again, like the problem with the way they explain to you external torque is, again, it's a deterministic way of looking at it, right? It's not a Freestonian way. It's not like the body is trying to learn. The body is that, prediction versus that Bayesian inference thing, right? So their way of movement lacks any Bayesian inference. There's only A causes B. It's a pure deterministic world where if you don't want to go in, you go out. Right, except it doesn't work like that.
So, well, it doesn't work with anyone right. Anyone who has coached. If you've coached anybody in the squat who's squatted, let's say, past their first couple of months, even through just the movement pattern, like in that first couple of months, telling someone to drive their knees out might just get them there. You might get lucky, but the truth is, if you're still using that cue and someone's been squatting for 6 months, goddamn well it's not working, and do it again for another year and it still isn't going to fucking work. It's one of those frustrating things. Trying to get someone to just put their knees out is never the fucking solution. Right.
And by the way, knees out past the ankle is just as bad as knees in past the ankle. So people know.
Yeah.
Right. Even actually it's worse. And I'll explain that in a second. It's actually worse because the knee can come slightly in, but the knee certainly cannot come slightly out when it gets very heavy. So it's actually, it can be worse. But after that, there's always the problem of proportions, like length of femur and stuff like that. Anyway, so so external torque is only down and up. And I'm like, oh yeah, right. So what do the knee collapse in? Sorry. So if you lack the tension inside the hammy, the body is going to have to find tension somewhere. Remember, the body is Bayesian inference is completely learning, and at every millisecond is trying to figure out how to do things with the best leverage possible. So naturally, learning happens since you're a baby. You've been doing that your whole life, where your body on the way down is trying to keep the best leverage possible. Right, the best leverage possible, right? And so the best leverage means the greater tension that you can apply. The heavier something is, the more tension you have to create through your muscles. That's obvious, right? So that means that the point of the movement is to create the maximum tension possible. So if you lack tension on the inside hammy, where are you going to find tension next? To the muscle that happens to be attached to it, which is the adductor's muscle. And so since you can't use the inside head of the hammy, you use the adductor. What happens when you use the adductor? Knees coming. And actually, interestingly, some of the Chinese Olympic weightlifters are being taught that, where at the bottom they let the knee come in order to create more tension in internal torque to come out of the hole. Yeah,
assuming that is not the only thing that you're relying on. It's simply as a way to get more tension.
Yeah. But that's what I'm trying to explain to everybody every time. It's what system would be built on going up out of the hole with massive weight on your back, either out of the adductors or the glute med. That'd be a very, very bad system. You would tear every single time. It makes no sense. Like, again, what kills me the most with that deterministic way that medicine have is the lack of faith in the body. But in the human body. It's like, do you think nature is so bad that it created a body that can only keep the knees from going in through the glute med? That is posted way up there. That is a horrible mechanical way of looking at things.
That is bad leverage.
That is horrible leverage. It's that tiny muscle here that is supposed to keep the knees out when you're squatting 1,000 pounds. That is like, how did we survive so long? So nature has to be the worst possible engineer that exists. Or
it's the best, you're looking at it.
Dumb. Exactly. Right, exactly. Right. And so my explanation was, inside hammy is weak, therefore you use the adductors. So what is the solution? Not knees out, it's stronger inside hammy. How do I know I'm right? You take a squat and someone have their knees coming in a lot, right? All right, so let's make them engage the inside hammy more. How do we do that? we give them a sandbag. Sandbag, they're going to have to squeeze, they go internal torque, they're going to lean forward a little bit. And what do we see? We see the knees coming in, but far less than one with a barbell. So how do you explain that one?
Yeah.
Because then the glute med should fail in both.
Yeah. Well, and I find so much with the sandbag squat is there is no choice but to do it right.
Exactly.
It loads there, it's going to force, and I think we should touch on the systematic nature of the torque chain as well.
Yeah, we were going to get there.
Yeah.
I'm just taking you through the history.
Yep. And so because like with the sandbag squat, I've had many clients who come in off the street and a barbell is not an option. Even just being in that,
upper
just
back
not
will
an
take
option.
it. Yeah, upper back will take it.
So, but you put a sandbag and it, honest to God, looks like I've had them squatting for years.
Yeah.
I mean, almost in day one.
Almost right away. Yeah.
And
it's crazy. I saw that with all my older clients that could all squat a sandbag perfectly, but couldn't do shit with a barbell.
Yeah.
Yeah. The difference was mind blowing. Like it took me a while to figure
Well,
out.
I think that's a great test as far as like where you're at with it. And for me with using, I've been using long barbells for squat bars for a long time. And so I get on a tight bar and I am like really exposed and I go down to squat. It is such a different thing for me back squatting with a barbell right now versus with a sandbag. If I squat with a sandbag, it feels like a squat. Right now I squat with a barbell. All I do is I was like, I need to buy a longer barbell. That's all I think the whole time.
Or to put my hands lower to have a setup like direct pound stone or some shit like that. Yeah. And so I'm starting to look at internal torque on the squat as well, because then my idea is like, but so what I'm saying is the knees collapsing because the lack of inside hammy. So I'm like, so that means that on the way down, it's internal torque, not external torque. It's not knees out, it's not glute med on the way down. It would have to be internal torque. I'm like, all right, so let me take away the barbell and look at nature, right? And I'm like, all right, so internal torque, that means that when I want a load to do a box jump, right? I'm going to load with my knees driving out, or I'm going to basically use my ass and right away I'm like, I load in internal torque, not in external torque. That's obvious. I'm like, but if so let me say I'm on a box and I jump down. Do I jump down and drive my knees out in order to receive myself?
Hope not.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Try. If you want to talk shit about internal torque, I have a test for you. We both going to go on a box that is a meter and a half off the ground, and we're going to jump. And I'm going to receive myself in internal torque using inside hammy, glute major, and everything. And you're going to receive yourself driving your knees out as you touch the ground. Let's do that.
Yeah. Not it.
I'm not doing it, but you do it.
Dibs on not doing that.
You prove your point, I'll prove mine.
Yeah.
So there's your challenge. Do it and film it, please. And show me receiving yourself with your knees being driven out as you touch the ground.
StrongFit Incorporated claims no liability for any such behavior.
That is very true. So it is not a challenge.
The content of this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. And
right, so it's not a challenge, but you go try. You go try and you tell me what that was. And by the way, when I want to do a broad jump or a box jump, I never load with my knees out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was like, all right, so there's an entire thing there. I was like, so then I brought the subject is what is a squat? And I was like, yeah, that's an interesting question. What is a squat? And I realized that, for example, a squat in nature is a jump.
Yeah.
That's about the only thing right there. But when I want to jump, do my hip ever break parallel?
No.
No, it's very rare. Like it's 1 in 10 million.
Yeah.
Right?
And if you do, there's not really much benefit to doing so.
Right. And so, but that's suddenly what hits me too is like, when do I ever create power with my hips below my knees?
I'm going to answer the answer people always say, which is, well, when you sit or take a shit. Or
no, but that, I mean, creating power up. I mean, when you take a shit, you create a different kind of power. When I say, that's what you know. That's why I didn't want to say internal torque, because it sounded like a pre-workout gone bad.
You got a bad bout of the internal
torque. Exactly. That's why I didn't want to call it. I was like, this sounds weird, but I had to because internal rotation was creating too much confusion.
So what you're saying is that like, is this seated position, this at or below parallel position? There's never really a need for us to, with a big, huge weight, didn't design to be producing a lot of force.
But even without but look, because everybody quotes babies, all right?
Yeah.
Put a baby sitting. What is the first thing he do to stand up? He puts his hands on the ground, lifts his ass up, and then hinges his way back up. And so look what happens when you lift a stone. Your hips you never lift a stone with your hips below your knees, ever. Everybody who tries, you see their hips rising, and then they hinge the stone onto their knees, and then they do that jumping motion to put the knees over the bar. So what you see all the time is you see always people going back to their jump position in order to do external torque, and that everything else is internal torque. And that has been proven It has not been disproven once so far. So what you see Olympic weightlifters at the bottom of a clean. What do? They basically their knees come slightly in. You can tell their knees go in and back into internal torque. And when they're in a jump position, then their knees go forward and out in external torque in order to do a jumping pattern. Mm-hmm. So what you have internal torque on the way down. If you're not in a jumping pattern, and I'm in the concentric phase of a jumping pattern, which is external torque, you're in internal torque. And so I was like, can I prove it? I was like, well, okay, let me look at sprinting. Not off the blocks, but the action of sprinting, right? And I'm like, if I'm right, that's internal torque. What do they all teach? Tension toward the center of the body. Mm-hmm. No one teaches drilling your feet out on a sprint. They actually tell you the exact opposite. So why would the squat, the only part of the squat where your feet would be driving out in external torque is the concentric part with your hips above parallel, the jump position. Yeah. So a jump is not a hinge. So that means that sprinting is a hinge in internal torque, whereas jumping is a squat in external torque. Gotcha. And prove me wrong, but take the barbell away, prove me wrong in all motions that you see.
So you had mentioned before about, how we don't believe nature would be designed with a dead spot in there, but where does the sticking point?
Right. So the sticking point is the switch of one torque to the next.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does one do to smooth that? Is it the transition that's the problem, or is it simply the other chain that's out? Is it timing? What is the cause of a sticking point? Truth is, I guess the weight's got to stick somewhere if it's too heavy for you to fucking move it anyway.
Right. So, you always get pinned, right? But there's going to be issues with the transition. So it's going through enough speed for the transition, first of all. Mm-hmm. And after that, it's a mobility issue because, right, so let's talk about mobility.
Yes.
Mobility is range of motion while maintaining tension.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. But then if I'm right, just making him feel bad every time. Mobility. Exactly. Yeah. If I'm right, there's two types of tension, right? Mm-hmm. Internal torque and external torque tension. So that means that there's two types of mobility. There's internal torque mobility, external torque mobility. That opens a major rabbit hole suddenly. Do you want me to go into that one first? Because there's some very interesting thing about this.
We should.
Okay, let's go into that first.
Because we did some surface level mobility talk before.
Right. So let me get into that one. It's going to be a long podcast today. Yeah. So
they're not going anywhere. Okay.
Exactly. Well, exactly. Yeah, you're stuck for at least 3 weeks.
The gym's closed.
Exactly. You had shit to do. So internal torque versus external torque mobility. I'm like, all right. So the range of motion while maintaining tension. I'm like, all right. So then I start to study both torque chains for mobility, and then something strikes me. First of all, let me go in order. So yeah, right. So we talk about creating tension means muscle has to contract. Yeah. All right. So there's a test for all of you. Did I talk about this in the last podcast in the Q&A?
Yes.
So let me go over that again. At home, I want you to try something. Try, without using something against your hand, try to engage the outside head of the bicep. Right? And you're going to see that you can't really do it. Now, what I want you to try is I want you to squeeze the inside head of the bicep. That's easy. And now you can squeeze the outside head of the bicep. But try to squeeze the outside head without going through the inside head. And you realize that to have full contraction, you have to go full inside head of the bicep before you can go outside head. Now, you could do it by pressing against the hand. Then I could relax the inside head and just go toward the outside head. Yeah. I would have to use my trap a bit. So all the external
But the truth is here, that tension, this is essentially creating the internal tension anyway.
Right. So that's the same idea, right? That's because I'm stabilizing my hand. Yeah. So that means that the internal torque muscle is the stabilizer. So what do I mean by that? You're going to sit like this with your on a chair, and you're going to try to squeeze the outside head of the hammy.
If you're listening, he's sitting knees straight forward.
Yeah, on a chair. And so I'm trying to squeeze the outside head of my hammy, and I realize that it's exactly the same thing. The only way I can do it is if I squeeze the inside head of the hammy first, and now I can come back and squeeze the outside head of my hammy. But I can't do it otherwise. Otherwise, I would have to put something against my foot, and then I could go to the outside head of the hammy. But again, I would have to stabilize the foot to do that. So that shows you that the internal torque is the stabilizer, that I cannot have external torque if I don't have internal torque first. You can see it on the pec. Mm-hmm. Try to engage the upper pec, right, by itself, and you'll see that without moving your shoulder, it's not possible. Now you squeeze the inside head the pec major, but the
lower.
Not the clavicular head, I forgot the name of Okay, that's going to come
Nobody
back.
cares. This one.
Nobody cares. Oh, yeah. Squeeze your lower pec, basically. And from there, you can go toward the upper pec, the clavicular head of the pec major. How did I forget that? Oh, anyway. Well, I'm getting old.
The benefit of me being mostly uneducated scientifically,
It's
like
like
formally with these,
yeah,
is
exactly.
I just don't care.
Yeah, exactly,
Like,
right.
It's that one, dumbass.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, that's so much neuroscience. Like, oh man, things go away when you don't work on them. So yeah, lower part of the pec, then you can engage the upper part of the pec.
let's
So
call it the juicy part.
the lower
juicy
part,
part.
The nipple part, exactly, the mating dance part. And so that shows you that you don't access the external torque muscle without first engaging the internal torque muscles. Right, so I was like, okay, that's very interesting. And then I keep pushing the argument and I'm like, all right, which part? So then I'm looking at stretching.
Yeah.
Which muscle do you stretch? Pec major, short head of the bicep, VMO, inside hammy, adductors. And I'm like, wait, glute major. I'm stretching only the internal torque muscles. I'm not stretching the upper pec, the outside head of the bicep, the upper trap. I can't stretch any of that. Either they contract, so it's pure concentric, but they don't really do eccentric. I was like, that's very interesting. Can I do eccentric with my upper pec? Well, you can try. That's going to hurt fucking everywhere. Yeah. Can I do eccentric with my outside head of the bicep and put enough weight on the bar, and you realize right away that you're going to try to go back to internal torque. Yeah. Like you're not designed to use the external torque muscles in eccentric, only in concentric. I was like, ooh, so you can use the internal torque muscle in concentric, but you can also use them in isometric and eccentric, whereas the external torque muscles are mostly concentric. I was like, that's interesting. So when I stretch, that means I stretch the internal torque muscle. So look at all the stretches you do at home, yoga and everything. It's always internal torque muscle, never external torque muscle. Then I took it further and I'm like, now let me take a look at the external torque muscle. And you realize that those are the ones you foam roll.
Yeah.
That you put that lacrosse ball on. Yeah. Like what? Upper pec, upper trap, outside head of the bicep,
You just described like my first year of CrossFit.
Yeah, exactly. Glute med, that's your second year of CrossFit. Yeah. Glute med, outside head of the bicep. What do you foam roll? So what do you foam roll and put the lacrosse ball? It's all the external torque muscles. I was like, ooh, very interesting stuff. So that means that mobility really is about the internal torque chain, not the external torque chain. Because what you try to increase in range of motion while maintaining tension is usually toward isometric and eccentric and all that stuff. That's internal torque. The external torque, you're just trying to shut off by using the lacrosse ball. Yeah. And that relates back to the closed gate, the closed gate we just talked about 2 episodes ago. So basically what you're doing is you're shutting off the external torque muscle that are spasming, right? Because that's using them too much or incorrectly or whatever, by closing the gate through the non-nociceptive fibers. And I was like, no, that's not how I explained it at the time. But I was like, so that it's wrong to use a lacrosse ball. That's right away I knew he was wrong. Yeah. That he was wrong because what you're doing is you're shutting off the muscles. Like that's always a bad idea.
And we mentioned before, the mobility is about, you talked about stabilization. So internal torque is necessary to stabilize any external torque you're going to have.
Anyway,
those muscles have to be there. And so without stabilization, you do not have safety with which your body says, fucking, what are you doing? No.
Right, exactly.
I'm not giving it to you. Like, you don't go further here.
So I'm not giving it to you unless I can turn it off. So your body says, I'm not giving it to you. Right. So what I'm going to do is internal torque, I'm going to hurt it. Right. Make it let go so that I can go full external torque. But the reason you don't have it in the first place is because you didn't earn it. Yeah. Your body is not giving it to you, not because your body is a bitch who refuses to get you what you want.
No, it's because you haven't done it.
Because you haven't earned it, therefore you're at risk of hurting yourself. Yeah. So what do you do then? If you don't have the proper range of motion, right? You can turn the internal torque muscle off. How? Simple. Nociceptive fibers turn the pain on. So that means that in a way, it's a corruption of what Kelly Starrett said. Yeah. Because what Kelly Starrett said basically with the lacrosse ball and all that stuff, even though I still think it's a mistake because of the way what people did with it. Not necessarily, not what he intended, but what people ended up doing. You have, I think his intention was, like you get stung, you go like this, right? Is to lower the pain factor. So I think his idea was to go at pain, which means your shoulder hurts. So nociceptive fibers are firing. I'm going to go around and just basically with the stuff, like make sure that the stuff is released so that the pain stops. But people went the other way. How do I increase range of motion if my body stops me? I increase pain to the moment where I turn the gate on, which allows the internal torque muscle fibers to let go so that I can go full external torque. And then, boom! And then I hurt myself. And I think that's why so then you have to do it more and more and more. And that's why you see people going from 5 minutes to 45 minutes of pure pain in order to shut off a mobility they never earned, right? So I think there was, I never, for example, I don't think what is happening right now with the formalin and everything was ever the intent of Kelly Starrett. But I think it came out because there's a fundamental misunderstanding of the system through the old school physio science.
Yeah. Well,
that led to what to me was, it could never have been anywhere. Like the way they were doing it necessarily had to lead to where it is right now.
Well, but and also like going after pain, it is a pretty simple thing to stumble into, is right. Well, I have pain, I can't get in this way. Like, let me go at this, and then so you do that. But then the average person gets relief from that pain and can still do what they do. But they are going to run with it.
But that's because they misunderstand what pain is. And by the way, if I'm going to lay a mistake on Kelly Starrett, love this stuff, but there's one thing I would disagree with him. It's his understanding of pain. That I'll disagree with, because pain, like the idea is you have pain because you have simple like adhesions or stuff like that. And I'm like, no. Pain is, it's so much complicated. First of all, you have the gate theory, which is nociceptive fibers. But even that's only one side of it. That's the physical side of it. And then, because you don't have, the problem with the gate theory is they tell you there's pain receptors, nociceptive fibers, and not pain receptors, below that, like just receptors, which is a non-nociceptive fibers. Even that is wrong, because you cannot call a nociceptive fiber a pain receptor. There is no pain receptor. There's intensity receptor. Yeah. So we have receptors and we have intensity receptors. Then from there, it goes to the brain, and the brain has a lateral and a medial system. Lateral being location, intensity of pain, and the other one is cognition. To learn why pain, where is it coming from, how do I avoid it, should I avoid it, what does it mean, and that's where the intensity can be transformed into pain.
And but only through it goes
in
our world, if you will, in our perception. It
lives in our perception. So it goes through intensity and location. But then after that, there's the other part where the cognition is about, that's intensity. Do I shut it off or not? Do I signal pain or not? You have people on the field of battle that had like major wound, they didn't feel shit until the battle was over. So it's not that simple, right? It's never that simple. What happens is you have the cognition of pain, which is up to parts of your brain to decide whether there's a chance for being maimed or not by that exercise, and do I signal pain right now or do I wait?
What are your immediate survival needs? What are your damage control needs?
So that's why pain is not that simple. So you have two ways of...
Plus every single human being is going to have their own level of pain tolerance, pain, how they respond emotionally to any pain is...
Right, because it's a learning behavior. It's a learning behavior.
And you mentioned this, I think, when we talked about the, the nociceptive fibers and non-nociceptive... Better words. We need better words.
We do. That's a fact. I'm going with the medical field on that.
I think we just make up words from here on out. Exactly. Because I don't care anymore.
StrongFit world.
I just don't care.
Yeah, fuck it.
Yeah. But anyway, is that we actually know very little about pain. We barely started. You can see a signal. You can measure electrical, but to know what it is on a human level is almost impossible.
There's a system there in place. So for example, there's two ways to shut off pain. You can go nociceptive, non-nociceptive fibers, and like, for example, rub something so the pain shuts off, or you can learn that pain is not that bad. Yeah. So that's a sled. Where at first you think you're going to die, you wake up the next morning, you're not that sore, you realize, I could have pushed harder. And you do that for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and suddenly your pain tolerance has increased tremendously. Not that you can take more pain.
It's just you're tougher.
You're not tougher.
It's that you just didn't die each time.
Right, and so that your body understands that it sounds bad, it feels bad, but it's actually not that bad. So you can go a little bit further next time. Yeah. So you're always at the same level of this is awful, but now you put a lot more weight on the sled. Yeah. So you got better.
Yeah, it's just as bad. There's just a lot more that you're putting in behind you.
Right.
Yeah.
But at your conscious level, it all feels the same. That's the thing. Yeah. Is pain is always horrible, no matter what it is. So if you train yourself the other way to become a wuss, you can literally go like, ow, my finger, and they're not lying. they're in tremendous amount of pain. They're just the same amount of pain when I die on the sled. We probably feel the same way about it. Yeah. Except you're a bitch, I'm not.
Yeah.
But because why? Because by the way, when I say you're a bitch, I don't mean it like that, because it can be that you've gone through so much trauma that you have learned that any intensity.
That voice is loud.
That voice is fucking loud, right? Yeah. And so that's the problem. For example, like that fucking jellyfish in Australia where it stings you for 72 hours, there's no amount of painkillers that can stop it, right? Stuff like that. So there's a cognition part of pain that is extremely important. So you do have the physical one with the nociceptive versus non-nociceptive fibers, but even them, they don't signal pain. They signal intensity. What you do with intensity is the cognition part of the brain. So now it's back to neuroscience. So that it is not that simple. Yeah. It is not that simple. So of course you can shut off the pain. I can show you 12 ways to shut off pain almost anywhere. But the point is, should I?
Yeah.
Can we fucking talk about this? Like your lower back hurts. Yeah, but maybe there's a reason. It's because you keep fucking up the stuff. And if you don't learn from it, I don't want to shut it off, because then you're going to do it more and more and more until you hurt yourself. Yeah. People will do as much as they can get away with. We see that right now.
Yeah.
Like an absurd situation, and no one is looking at the consequences because right now it's working. So people do the exact same shit, putting everything on the credit card with the body as well, where they go like, oh, I just want the lower back to stop. Of course you do. And you know what? If you really want it to stop, do something about it, but don't shut off the pain. Oh. Fix the mistake.
Plus, look at what happens to someone. You talk about lower back pain, that progression from having lower back pain, being stubborn, wanting to going away, to the time in which they finally learn that lesson, to stop doing that, to stop fucking picking the scab, whatever, you know what I mean? Like that, you've dealt with those clients, I have too. A back injury that takes time and they have to learn those hard lessons changes a person. And there is a massive amount of emotional cost to be paid to that process.
Because it goes the other way.
Re-aggravation of an injury, like it's just.
But because also it goes the other way. It's that, again, like if pain is a cognitive process, that means that emotion is part of pain. So we say pain creates emotion, which is true. But what if emotion creates pain? Because everything is always a feedback loop.
Yeah.
It's always a double-way street, not even feedback loop, a double-way street. That means if pain causes emotion, emotion causes pain. Yeah. That means that your lower back makes you feel like shit, but maybe it's because you feel like shit that your lower back hurts. That's emotional mapping, where we've seen it time and time and time again. It's a double-way street. And so that means that if you don't deal with the stuff that causes the lower back, shutting off the pain will only increase your capacity to do the stuff that causes you back pain.
And we've talked about with emotional balance why that it is only going to be emotionally more intense.
Right.
Because that is the only way learning is going to happen. And on top of it,
remember, so pain is cognition, right? So pain is wherever you are, the body will tell you you're in pain. So it doesn't matter if you're here or there, the body will tell you you're in pain. So that means that I shut off the pain at that level, or you rest. Yeah. It's fine. But then you come back here, the pain will follow you. So now you used to move at 100. You stop training, you move at 80. Oh, I feel better. Yeah, for now. But remember, pain. Everything is going to come back down. So now you're hurting at 80. So you go to 60. Then you have to wait, and then now you're hurting at 60. That's why rest doesn't work either, because the pain will follow you everywhere you are, because it's a learning process. You're not dealing with the shit.
Yeah, getting less capable is only going to mean you'll be in pain and less
It doesn't
capable.
matter. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. You'll be in pain and less capable. Whether you're more capable, so people, of course, are going to listen to this saying, oh, fuck it, then I'll just be more capable. Yeah. But because eventually you break. That's not the point. You're not learning
the thing. And being more capable means solving the problem, not doing more.
Exactly. Doing more what is, because the pain will win eventually. Yeah, I mean, once the body learns, it'll just always bring you back down.
So, I mean, that's kind of the mobility side,
right?
If you will.
And so, so there was the entire idea. So the idea was, okay, we need to build that internal torque. I was like, all right. So in order to have a good grasp of it, I remember I was in Dubai. So there's a coffee shop named Cafe Rider, which is really cool. Like, not that you can go right now, but eventually, hopefully, the world will stop this insanity, and we'll be able to actually communicate with others, not through social media, just like, hi, my name is. And then across a gym that is called the Warehouse. Yeah. Warehouse is where, what's his name, just trained for a couple of months. He was in Dubai. The sheikh that is owner of that probably paid him to go there. Larry Wills.
Oh, yes.
It's that gym.
Yes.
Right. So that
Okay.
every time I was in Dubai, that was my gym.
Yeah.
Really cool place. And and there's Cafe Rider right next to it, like literally 2-minute walk, which is important because Dubai, when it gets hot,
2
you
minutes
cannot,
walk is
it's as long as
about
it
as
gets.
most
Yeah,
of it.
that's about as far as you go. So I'm like, all right, so there's internal torque muscles and the external torque muscles. I'm like, well, which one is which? I was like, all right, well, let's figure it out. And so I'm going at also like external torque is concentric, so it's more explosive. And the other one is more reps. I'm like, I'm starting to wrap that idea around. You can still go low reps, but there has to be a difference. So I'm starting to wrap my head around that. I was like, I can only think of one way to figure this out. I'm going to take a anatomical chart. So I get that on my iPad, and then I get my Apple Pen. And I'm like, I'm going to color the shit. I was like, all right, which muscle do I know is internal torque? I'm going to go red or yellow. Red.
I don't remember. I think red.
Red, I think. Yeah. And then external torque is going to be in yellow. So that's the chart that is available for everybody now. And I'm like, let me color. So I go like upper pec, lower pec. And every time I had a doubt, I was like, all right. I leave my iPad there. I put my stuff and I go walk 2 minutes, go to the gym. And for 45 minutes, let's say it's bicep. I'm like, I do bicep in internal torque, light and heavy. Then I do bicep in external torque, light and heavy. Then I try that. And then I come back and I'm like, well, this was external torque, this was internal torque. And then I go, what about tricep? Okay, 2 more espressos. Go back to the gym, 45 minutes, internal torque.
That was caffeine, Julien.
Oh, that was caffeine, Julien. Like I had, and by the way, I did that for 3 weeks. It was sore as shit. Because every single time I had, so at first I was like internal torque, external torque. That's simple. So every 30 minutes back and forth. Then I was like, well, low reps, high reps. Fuck. So I have to go back. Low reps, high reps, low rep internal torque, high reps internal torque, low reps external torque, high reps external torque. Yeah. And then for each muscle. And then I started to build a chart like that. And it took me literally the first 2 weeks of just doing that back and forth, back and forth,
just
back and forth.
Espresso,
avocado toast, and espresso. And so that was...
With like no discrimination for muscle group, just like I just did this one 3 days in a row. I think I figured it out.
Fuck it. I may do the calves again. Like I'm not sure. Every time I wasn't sure. Like fuck it. Let's go back to the gym. Let's do it again. And so I did that from 9 till like 1 or 2 in the afternoon for 3 weeks straight. And by week 2, I had more or less the graph that is starting to establish, and I see patterns. Like I'm like, ooh, that's really interesting. That's why I'm texting Richard like crazy. And I see, for example, Dorian Yates. Versus Arnold Schwarzenegger. Dorian Yates is all external torque muscle. Schwarzenegger is all internal torque muscle. I was like, oh, that's fascinating. And I'm starting to see like sprinters versus Olympic weightlifters. And you start to see the patterns. I was like, oh, I'm onto something. Yeah. And then I see really then that there is an internal torque chain, not muscles, but chain, and an external torque chain. That external torque chain is everything going away from your belly button. Internal torque chain is everything going toward the belly button. And I can tell, like when you're in a fetal position, that's all the muscles in red. When you jump, that's all the muscles in yellow. And I'm like, so there's not one muscle group. That's separating muscle group is functional segregation. Yeah. Functional integration is what I was working on. Is a system. And then that means there's 2 muscles groups in a sense. Yeah. 2 groups, internal torque muscles, external torque muscles.
And that first iteration of the chart, if you will, that you have, I would say is was 95% finalized kind of at that point.
Oh yeah.
Been a few little changes.
3 weeks. But after those 3 weeks,
adding the upper pec as internal torque. So, separating upper and lower pec, I think.
It's separating the upper abs and the lower abs into internal torque versus external torque. Yeah.
And but really, other than a couple small changes, it's pretty much sat there and then has been used and experimented like out in the training system. Then
and it's been proven true every time. It has not been disproven.
Because at that moment you had worked on it still kind of, as the system, but in a vacuum, as in like, I'm just working on these movements in this thing. Then you start taking torque and the concepts and tension over position and dropping it into larger scope training. Yep. And what has that been?
Okay, so that's week 3. Right, so that's week 3. I'm looking at the chart and I see 1 and 2. So everything is always seem to be a binary system. It's like 1 versus like, I'm like, oh, that's very interesting. And then a crazy idea comes to mind. Like I know something else that goes in 2s. The nervous system, the peripheral nervous system goes parasympathetic, sympathetic. Yeah. I'm like, oh, like I don't think there's no coincidence in nature. Like it's just an extremely smart system we don't understand. And when something doesn't make sense, just don't think nature fucked up. Things you just don't understand it.
Were you binary with the intern lecture, were at that point, had you kind of come with the arch
Yes.
of that?
Always,
point, right?
always. The arch was the first
So
one.
then when you get to the sympathetic, parasympathetic
That means
nature,
it's an arch.
yeah, but at that point, not the general consensus, but a lot of what's being said is it is either this or that on the nervous system.
And I knew they were wrong.
Yeah.
They had to be wrong.
And was that how did you, I mean, you've explained many times the logic behind that, but how did you know that they were wrong? Was that from what you had learned with torque or sex? That's the other side.
That's the one that I was like, they're wrong.
Yeah. Especially such an important evolutionary function to not fit.
That's the main
system.
one.
Yeah.
Like everything is around sex because otherwise the species doesn't survive.
Yeah.
So if you can't explain sexual behavior through whatever you're doing, you're failing.
Yeah. It's actually a good point too, in that like everything that you've looked at as a system, it does have to kind of fit with those most basic functions: movement, nutrition, reproduction.
Right. Or nature fucked up.
Yeah.
Right. By the way, that's always the or. Like remember, like Bayesian inference is hypothesis versus observation minus what you don't know.
Yeah.
So I always looked at it like this. My hypothesis is nature is smarter than we are, is a massive quantum computer or whatever the fuck is above that.
It's not bound by fucking words or the one or two languages that we know.
Or
like,
10,000 years of culture and maybe more, we never know.
Yeah.
But the last really 200 years where science started to produce more, nature is not bound by that. It's been going at it for like life on Earth is unicellular level. We're talking like what, 6 billion years now? No, that's life. Life is 3.8 billion years. 3 billion years just on unicellular life, by the way. So things like that. Like so, I was like, that's my hypothesis, right? And every observation has proven me right. But there's always a possibility that nature fucks up somewhere. There's they're not random mutations, but they are mutations. All right.
That don't end up becoming beneficial.
Right. So again, maybe nature fucked up. My hypothesis is that it doesn't. It's extremely powerful and it's just always in a system we don't understand. So whenever I look at those things, I always go from what is it that I don't understand? Not nature fucked up. Let's give you a pill. Let's foam roll this. Let's do that. I'm like, no. It's part of a system I don't understand. So I need to do better. And so I'm starting to look at the parasympathetic, sympathetic like that, saying like, no. Let me imagine that it's an arch because that's what I see everywhere. Let me disprove my own hypothesis with observation that it's an arch. And I look at sexual behavior and the arch fits exactly the stuff. And then the more I look into it, the more everything fits the way I'm building the system. Yeah. And so I'm like, all right, then I'm right.
Yeah.
Or at least I'm less wrong than they are because they cannot explain the stuff that I can explain using the arch with the parasympathetic, sympathetic. Yeah. And so when I put all the stuff in there, the first thing I did is jump versus sprint, right? To see if I'm right. So what do I see if I see parasympathetic? I go toward internal torque. So that means anything a hinge, so sprinting, would be toward the flow state, right? Toward more the parasympathetic side. And what do I see? I look at sprinters. And so long story short, ventral vagus nerve controls the muscles of the face, right? Ventral vagus nerve is the parasympathetic side. So that means that when you're in internal torque, you would have a relaxed face. Yeah. And that's what they teach sprinters. Never contract your face. That actually slows you down. I was like, ooh, there you go. And now, if I go the other way, what do I see? Let's go at Olympic weightlifting. Then when the guy is in external torque, so that when he's going off, like that triple extension, then he should be making a face. And that's exactly, you see the clock off and the stuff like that.
Yeah, that's not a moment of a calm.
No, it's not. It's like, But then when they catch, they're calm. And I'm like, there's your peripheral nervous system. There's internal torque, external torque. And there's the parasympathetic, sympathetic. So that's how I build it up. But I built it up out of that stuff in Dubai for 3 weeks. 9 to 1, 9 to 2 every day, massive amount of espressos and avocado toast. That was my mornings. Yeah. Oh yeah. But out of those 3 weeks, I did that I built a system of the torque chains that built, in those 3 weeks.
That built kind of, I would say, the foundation of how you would explain the StrongFit system. Probably that sat for 2 years, probably a year and a half, 2 years of you teaching and refining and teaching how to teach that better. Yeah, and now I do think that those subjects now, it's funny, we talk about this today, but other than a few integrations of some of the new stuff, which helps it be more concise, you've kept that, it has been pretty much the same beyond a couple of things that we just learned as we went.
No, but that's why I know this was correct, is I made the things more precise.
Yeah.
But I have not changed the system. If I look at the StrongFit system, if we want to call it a system, is those 3 weeks in Dubai were the most important.
Yeah.
That was really the breakthrough. Because when I opened the door of the nervous system, he opened a door not just for the StrongFit system, he opened a door in me. Because this is when I decided to go after all this. This is a precursor to neuroscience. I remember I was in Dubai and I was like, and you know, it's almost like the imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome,
where it's
yeah.
like, who are you to go into the nervous system? Dude, you're a movement specialist. You do internal torque, external torque.
Mm-hmm.
Like, let it go. You just had the map for internal torque, external torque. You can make a career with this.
Yeah.
You can do 10 years of seminars and do everything on internal torque, external torque. You can change everything. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, that's who you are. That's where you belong. This is where, you know, like almost where you were born. And I was like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Don't fucking move.
It's funny.
Just stay there.
In these, over the years too, and I've been really fortunate to meet a lot of people who've accomplished a lot of things in the podcasting these last 5-6 years. But I will say that the most universal principle that I have ever come across is imposter syndrome amongst those people.
Yeah, we all have it.
Yeah.
But you know what made me go forward? And for me, it was so that this is not about StrongFit, this is about me. But it was an extremely important moment because that's the moment where I decided to reach my potential. Mm-hmm. To go like, fuck it.
Yeah, not staying in this box that
I will not stay in this box. Yeah. And I was like, I don't have a degree. No, I'm not them. But you know, like I've always talking to myself, felt I was smart. Not smart, intelligent. And I was like, all right, so how about you prove it? It's the same conversation I had with myself when Tatiana told me she was pregnant with Yaya. It's like, what do you want out of life? Are you going to tell her, like, you know, because at the time I'm just coasting on talent. Yeah. And it was one of those moments where I was like, are you going to do you say you have it. Are you going to do something with it? Yeah. Or are you going to stick with the movement stuff and just make money? So it was one of those moments. And what helped me was Spartacus. Mm-hmm. He's reading the story of Spartacus. I've read it many times since I'm a kid, but like the movie with Kirk Douglas does not even do him justice. He did more than what Kirk Douglas does in the movie. Incredibly. The dude had a life but what struck me the most about the life is, Google him, but you'll see that basically what he did, he broke what is called the wall. It's the Roman Empire. The south of Italy belonged to the Venetian pirates. Mm-hmm. And so Rome had built a wall to not let them come in. And Spartacus broke the wall on the way down. And then when he was betrayed by the Venetian pirates because the consul had bought them off, he went back up north and he broke the wall again. He broke it twice. And the thing was, the guy was born a slave. He was a Spartan, Spartacus, but he was a slave. And I was like, how dare you? You were born a slave. You had no business almost bringing Rome to its knees. Yeah. Like, how dare you?
The audacity of this motherfucker.
The audacity of this motherfucker. Of like, but you're a slave. Yeah. And this is where human greatness comes in, is that. I'm sure he had the imposter syndrome too. He had to have. And
I think what I find is regular people, I think everybody deals with it at some point. Yes. Or if not all the time. The difference is the people that I've met that have found great success, they deal with it and then they just keep doing.
You feel it, you just keep going.
You feel it and you just keep going. Because I'll tell you this, the thing that I have understood a long time ago with this is that in almost everything, it's like, all these people that you think just have everything and know everything figured out, that doesn't exist. This idea that there's someone I can call on who's like got the answer at every level, that person does not exist. Yeah. And it's, once you realize that, it's a very freeing, you're like, we're all just figuring this fucking thing out. Like, that's pretty, and as long as someone's intentions are good and they're using good information, like, I think that's the best you can fucking do.
That's the needle moves forward, but you always that feeling is like the audacity of trying to explain the nervous system out of someone who does no degree whatsoever. Mm-hmm. I finished French at the baccalaureate, so it's equivalent of like first year or second year of college in the US. Yeah. That's it. That's all I have. Yeah. Like everything else, I figure out myself. So I'm self-taught on everything I've done. But so I was like, how dare you go into the nervous system? And I was like, well, I won't tell anyone, but I'm going to do it anyway. It just happened that I told everybody. But
well, the way it was too is it didn't take long, because I remember we were still, it was almost, my first seminar was still almost exclusively with torque and movement and some of the basic principles. And the nervous system stuff was just coming in there. And I could tell you were teaching it like you were playing in it still.
Yeah.
A little bit. And then I think by the end of Coaches Week, there was a couple of times where you were out training, you come running inside.
Yeah.
And you're like, Pearson's there.
Yeah.
And that was the first time I started seeing the wheel.
Right.
We got a circle instead of an arch.
Yes, right. I didn't have the wheel then.
That was like day 4 or 5, Coaches Week 5 days back then.
That might be when I came up with the wheel, actually. It's right around then. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember Julien comes running in from outside while Richard was working with us at that afternoon session. Scrum Schmidt on the wall, and that was the first time I had ever seen it.
I think it's the first time, yeah, because I was playing with it in the gym, and then Australia is when I started to the phylogenetic hierarchy. It's like, let me go from flow to fight to flight, and that's when that was really the beginning in a way of emotional mapping, because I put Richard through some workouts, I did them myself, and the amount of shit that came out, we were like, oh my god, what is this? Like Richard crying in the gym, me. Suddenly I'm finishing the hierarchy, I remember that. And I'm doing some type of stretching when I'm hitting the glute med. And I got beat up when I was 10, I think, or something like that. So I'm 10, 11 years old, some shit like that. And I'm falling in love with a 13-year-old, like 2 years older. So, right?
Dangerous game.
Girls are mean.
Well, at that age, girls develop a little bit faster, too.
A little bit.
Appearance-wise, you were dating a 16-year-old and you looked like you were 8.
No, but I looked already big enough for...
Julian's always been swole, guys. No
exactly.
What he tells you.
Yeah, but mentally, fuck no, right? And so I'm like, oh my God, or maybe I'm 12 and she's 16, even worse or some shit. Looking back, I'm like, dude, a teenage girl.
Never had a chance.
No, maybe not. But like, I'm 11, she's 14, like, some shit like that, right? And so I'm kind of stalking her, like looking back, right? And so the parents are like, why are you waiting outside just so I can catch a glimpse? I mean, it's cute, but at the same time, like the parents get pissed and so whatever. And so at some point, the girl is like, hey, why don't you meet me somewhere? I'm like, oh, the world has finally answered my prayers. Yeah. I meet her to find 8, 15, 16-year-old guys. Right, I'm with a friend. They grab me and they start pummeling me. Right. And they looked at it as a joke. Right? Doing the shit and stuff, just roughing me up. They didn't beat me up. They roughed me up, but not beat me up. Like he wasn't, I was never going to get...
It was enough to hurt, but you weren't going to die that day.
No, not even hurt physically. Honestly, there was not, but mentally, like, can you imagine?
Yeah, At the very least,
humiliation, even the girls.
Exposed.
And I just started crying. I just bawling my eyes out and everything. That's why they let me go. And one of the girls actually there, now I remember, was like, guys, what the fuck are you doing? Like, she's like super, but not the girl I wanted. I wanted to go out. Like, just one girl who say, oh, I'm so sorry and everything. But like, I'm just bawling my eyes out and they let me go. Crush me and everything. That fucking bitch. Like, call me a wuss, call me a bitch for crying. Like, 2 months later or the year after, I was like, we playing tennis, and she's like, oh yeah, like, well, yeah, but you cry your way out of it, you fucking bitch. Yeah, she told me that. Looking back, I'm like, oh, I wish I could meet all of them again. But he fed me toward MMA and everything, because out of that, I was like, this will not happen again.
Well, at least you didn't end up with some awful fucking human being like that in your space for very long. Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ. That husband. Ooh, poor husband. But by the way, again, they didn't beat me up. They roughed me up. Yeah. But physically, I was fine.
It was a
really humiliation. It was a humiliation that killed me.
It was like shitty group bullying, just a bunch of
bullshit.
Right,
exactly. And by the way, 16 on an 11-year-old, 12-year-old, like this is as bullying someone. People don't understand what it does. Like I felt humiliated. Like, oh, that. And by the way, it hit me harder than I thought, because when I'm finishing the wheel that day in Australia, this is what comes up. Stuff that honestly I thought I was fine with. I guess I wasn't. And so I'm finishing the stuff and it's coming up. And I don't remember crying necessarily, but the whole thing was like, I'm reliving it. I'm in it. It's hard to explain what the phylogenetic does until you've done it. But it's like, I'm not, at the time, 40-something, reliving it. I'm fucking 11. With the intensity of an 11-year-old, going through it. And then I understood how much it hit me because I was back to being 11. That's what it means, reliving the stuff. By the way, people misunderstand. The problem with emotional mapping that people misunderstand is that you think you're reliving it as you.
Yeah, it's not thinking about it.
You're not.
Now.
Yeah, and you're not reliving it as you at 40. You're reliving it of you at 8.
Yeah.
Or whatever the trauma happened.
The version of you that was unable to process it fully at that time.
That's what you're reliving with that intensity.
Because that person's got work to do.
Right, with that intensity. And so I'm back to 11 being with the whole feeling coming up. And I was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And it was me finishing, like starting to release some of the stuff that was inside. And it was so powerful.
Yeah.
So powerful. To the point where I was like, Richard, I got something for you. And he did it and started crying for 3 days. Like, we'll bring it and you explain. But that's when we were like, oh my God, we have the solution for trauma, for anxiety, for depression. Like, we have it. So we started like going deeper into this. And then at some point, because Richard and I, we had very close relationship with death. So we have an understanding a bit different than most. And then we started to put people through it. And that's when I told Richard, no.
Yeah.
We're not touching this because people are not ready to relieve necessarily the trauma and stuff like that. But I still believe that there's something extremely powerful there.
Yeah. Plus, in being able to that gives you the opportunity to do the work. One, you have to spend, in that moment, you're spending time reliving it, hopefully gaining some context. What happens,
no, you do, but...
And what I find, though, is in the aftermath.
Just don't jump.
Yes.
Yeah.
In the aftermath, what I find is that you often then find like, oh, like that person, that kid who felt that way for all of these years or whatever, who was there just not fucking being addressed. That little bastard still had a voice in a lot of the things I've been doing in my life.
Much.
And then you realize you're like, in a situation like that, it would be very easily to go around with a chip on your shoulder, something to prove all the time, or be guarded emotionally, or avoid being vulnerable, like all that shit.
Oh, I'm sure it did.
Immediately. But, and then so you see that when you process, you feel it again, like with a sense of urgency, because it's closer to you.
Yeah.
It's not so far away.
And what struck me the most is when I did that workout that day, I was looking for something. I was chasing a rabbit. I was sure this was going to come toward some fucked up shit my mother did. But that's not what popped out. This is what popped out. And I realized how much of my fear of humiliation came from. It didn't come from my mother. It came from that thing. I was like, oh, but it led me to most likely MMA. It led me, so I know that my greatest fear is humiliation.
Yeah.
By a mile. Like I've been into fights that I had no business winning by fear of humiliation, guys being better. Like that always been one of my greatest driving forces has been that. And I think that's where it's rooted. Into that thing, not into the fucked up shit from my mother. So I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's some as well, but that was actually a big piece. But that came at the end of the hierarchy. So that thing in Dubai drove the system to where it is now, and now I'm trying to understand it through neuroscience perspective. But that was really the beginning of not just doing internal talk, external talk, but moving past that, which a lot of coaches have not necessarily agreed or enjoyed.
Yeah.
There's actually not a lot, but some coaches I told me straight out they wish I'd stayed with just internal talk, external talk.
Yeah,
and I told them that's fine. But I told them you're crazy.
Yeah.
If you don't see the power of all this, like you're crazy. Like the shit we can do with all this.
Yeah.
Like I have, anxiety. Just lactate and anxiety alone is something that.
And again, like we talk about, is the system has to work on the way you move.
Exactly.
It has to cover all of those bases. And so I think the way that
no nervous system, no nutrition.
Yeah, exactly. Your humanness as a whole should be taken apart into your training. We could stick with movement and torque and draw the line there, and then fucking what?
And then what?
We'll have a bunch of people ineffectively teaching those things because they're not taking into consideration the whole human.
Yeah, what do? I just do seminars on that and trying to make money.
Send you all off. You'll be 30% more effective.
Right, and then 5 years later, I'll do an ebook.
Yeah.
And then that I can sell and make more money. Is that the point? Yeah. Right. So I was like, no, this is where the shit is taking me. So I'll keep pushing until I'll run out of space eventually. But in the meantime, I just keep studying the stuff to just make it forward because I've seen the power of it. That's where I think, though, if there's a difference, it's there. Is people don't see the power of it because they have not experienced it.
Yeah.
So how do you experience all this? You have to start with internal torque, external torque. Because the only way I went through the phylogenetic hierarchy is because I did full internal torque first, followed by external torque, followed by extinction training. There's an entire thing, but I put myself in it 100%. Right? And I remember like I did internal torque, external torque for, I don't know, like months, every day for hours before I got to that point, so I could connect to my body well enough that I could let my nervous system go where it went, and I mean, so all this has to be experienced. It cannot just be understood on paper.
Yeah.
Like if you think you're going to just take the words on paper and teach your people with it, you're mistaken.
Yeah.
It represents an involvement of you on a much deeper level than you know.
Yeah.
Like if you want a shit to work, you're going to have to go through, the revelation I went through those workouts and stuff like that. So that's why emotional mapping, you're not ready.
Yeah.
People ask me all the time, you're not ready. You're not ready because you didn't go do it. How do I know you're not ready? How do I know you didn't do it? Because you're asking.
Also because I do think if you had done, people who have done and really focus on the torque and the tension stuff, and then have really taken that and applied that into the stuff that you teach about the phylogenetic hierarchy, and then do some training that you, of your own design, knowing it, build into that, and then the experiences that you have with that, you will then have an understanding of what we're talking
And then you
about.
won't ask me about emotional mapping because you'll respect it too much to go like, oh, I don't want to play with that.
And you'll know that it's for you to use at your pace and not for you to use on
it's
someone
like
else.
doing the protocol in No Fix November and stuff like that. Like recently, I put someone through, she wanted to start straight up with No Fix November on the protocol. I was like, all right, we did that and the training. And suddenly our lower back is spasming.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh shit, I don't know what that is. She went full through the thing and cried for 2 days. And I had so she had the same thing at No Fix November. Me, I got sick for like a few days. She had that for like 3-4 days, but basically crying all night long for 2 nights, but she never gave up. That was one of the most impressive shit I've ever seen.
Yeah.
She has no particular deep trauma, but not rape, nothing like that. And when the lower back started spasming, she opened up to it and went full into it. And for 2 nights, like 2 nights of crying and 5 days of being the sickest she's been since she's a kid and everything. But she went through the whole thing most impressive stuff. Only person I've seen doing that ever that does not come from a serious trauma background. So that's the thing is most of you're just not ready to go there. You're not willing. You're either not willing or not ready to go that deep into yourself. So forget coaching others if you can't do it to yourself. If you can't go inside yourself and find those answers, how can you teach it?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing with internal torque, external torque. If you have imbalances, if you can't engage your teres major, if you can't do this, if you can't do that, then you're not ready to go past that in the system.
And because those are all really tricky things to communicate with words unless you've been there. That's why we talk about the tension over position thing is always
always.
Because we talk.
Yes.
It's easy to talk position. I can use a word and it puts a.
It's easy to sell. It's easy to show. It's easy
works,
to.
But it's really hard for me in a movement or in a position to teach you what. Muscles, and using the right word doesn't fucking let someone who doesn't know that word.
Yeah, because all you're saying is engage your glutes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, once you've done it, you understand the difference between glute major and glute min.
Yeah.
Before that, you don't because you've never experienced it. Like, can you? And it also
like Richard
teaches
always
you.
says, can you paint a story for that person?
Right, exactly. And so you need to feel it, right? But the key too also is all that work. Like, can you just, can you, without moving your shoulders, can you elevate? So elevate your scapula means what? Can you just get the traps to go up, but without moving my shoulder? Just that. The pec dance? Can you do that with the traps?
No.
Right, exactly, right. So there's control. Can you retract your shoulder blades without moving your shoulder? Can you protract your shoulder blades like you're the douchebag at the gym? Without, you should have enough experience. Right.
I got that one.
Exactly. Yeah, right. So, but you remember when you were 15 and flexing in the mirror? That was actually a good thing. But this is part of the work though. For coaches out there, this is part of the work. Can you protract your shoulder blade? Can you spread the lats, like, the PLS syndrome, permanent lat syndrome? No. Can you make yourself into a flying squirrel? Maybe you don't have the muscle mass, that's okay, but can you at least flex out? Can you bring them in without moving the shoulder? Can you elevate the shoulder blade? Can you depress your shoulder blades? Can you squeeze your hammy until it cramps? Can you squeeze your calf until it cramps? Do you have control of your own muscles? If you don't have that, let's start there.
I think, and the thing that I learned a lot from the torque discussion, learning about torque, learning how to apply it specifically, is I really learned the value. Once I knew I could layer this system, internal, external torque over movements, and I could kind of see what I needed, what the holes were, then I started to figure out how to make those fucking muscles work. Right? And that's where I learned this really good appreciation for bodybuilding posing.
Right.
If I had to, so at some point we'll have a homework thing for that where like, because I do believe if you,
do it for a month,
pose in the mirror for 5 minutes a day for a month.
That should be next month.
Yeah. So we'll put that up there because I think everything from posing to vacuums, like all of those things are.
Vacuum is like yoga. Yoga does that.
Fucking vacuums are. I see people who are Hunter's got a baller fucking vacuum, by the way. Hunter's little waist too, so he can suck that thing, and I swear to God, you can see his spine from the front.
Yeah, exactly.
It's crazy.
You go like there's no organs.
And when I do a vacuum, it goes from like here to like here.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I'm like, where is all my stuff?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Well, he does it. I'm like, because does all your kidneys go in your lungs? What the fuck's happening?
Yeah.
And me, I was like, I don't know. It just feels like everything's here to stay.
Yeah.
But
because they don't move. That's why.
But posing is, I think, is such a lost art, and it's a really it's a thing that's always been like kind of shunned by the CrossFit community a little bit, the more bodybuilding things.
Yes.
But I really think from an awareness standpoint, it's some good homework. Read about it, look it up, watch tutorials. Like if you don't fucking know anything about it, there's a whole world of that you can dive into.
Like it's just control your own muscle.
Yeah.
This is part of the work.
Yeah.
Right? Like if I say engage the pecs, you have to be able to at least contract that. If you can't do that, then you're not gonna find the muscles. Like people always want to jump to the most advanced stuff because they don't like the idea that they suck at something simple. But the fact is, you do. You have. By the way, you don't have to do it forever. You just need to learn to control. Figure it out, and then after that, it's very little maintenance.
It's like riding a bike.
Right? Yeah. The maintenance is very little, but all that work has to be done. So before you want to talk about emotional mapping, can you control your own muscles? Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're not ready to go to the next step, and that's something we'll do podcasts about. But people wanting to jump forward when they're not ready, like they. Master yourself first. Mm-hmm. Like, come on, Sun Tzu, like everybody has said it. I mean, like, master yourself first. Master your muscles. Can you engage and again, as I was showing, if you can engage the internal torque muscles, which are the one you engage consciously, then you're screwed. Because then you won't be able to activate the external torque. Yeah. Right? So there's the basic stuff, like internal torque muscles, squeeze them, make them cramp, find them. Yeah. And if you can't find one, well, guess what? That's what you need to work on. But that's the base of the system. So yes, I go way further and I talk about emotional mapping and neuroscience. Why? Because I spent the hours doing it. I still have control of the muscle. I spent so many hours doing that. You can't try to follow me into neuroscience, into emotional mapping, if you have not done the work that I did back then. That's the difference. Like you're still pacing on the rope pulls. You still don't know what burner question means. You still have not pushed that fucking harness until you passed out. You have not done the work. You have not earned your way forward. So before you want to take the step forward and get the emotional mapping, what you find is shiny, you have to do the work. Yeah. You have to find your muscles. You have to pass out on the harness. Those are the necessary steps in order to get to the environment stuff. And very few people want to actually do that work.
Yeah. Well, we are probably at time.
Okay.
If you notice when I peeked over there, I found a little secret.
Oh, you're looking in the window?
If I see in the window, if I see the screen is still on, I know it's still recording. So I know the battery's not dead.
Okay, so there's always that, yeah.
Except for one of these two phones I set so the screen never shuts off unless I do it. So that might be bad.
But at least we have one
Something's
view.
Something's got to be working. So, but
we got the audio no matter what.
But anyway, that's got us wrapped up for today. If you want to support the podcast, go to podcast.strongfit.com, strongfitlibrary.com, we talked about last week, but that's all the articles about all the torque stuff, the charts, everything. I'll also have some more stuff kind of in the links below for all of this as it relates to these things. I would like to get to the point where when we have a podcast that's on a topic, that then I can start populating in the descriptions some links to relevant material from the library.
That'd be cool.
But that might not happen on this one yet.
Yeah,
keep a look.
But we get because he has a lot of work to do because we have the cooking show getting ready. So, but it will happen.
Yeah, it will happen. Things will be there for. But go to strongfitlibrary.com for now, and you can search around for anything you need. There's lots of stuff on the torque subject. That was one of my favorite ones because it's been around for a while.
If you just type internal torque, you'll be there.
Before we even went live with it, I remember I messaged Julien and I was like, just so you know, Google like internal torque, I think was what it was, on Google, and you would get like 1 or 2 videos from our YouTube channel, and then everything else that is not StrongFit related about the concept of torque in any number of other things.
Yeah.
And then you go to the library, and it was like 20 some fucking articles and videos on the concept of torque generally, you know. So I was like, yes, it's finally here.
Yeah, exactly. But we're gonna we're building all this. By the way, we're not done because there's also there's a lot of early podcasts I don't even know where they are.
I've got them all somewhere.
You got them?
I've
but there's
got
that Vicky Lee videos on YouTube. I have to find them and send them to you.
Yeah, fun.
Because those were actually cool because there was early stuff. She was trying to get me to say stuff about my brother. Those are I would like to see.
I do have right now. I have a PDF for a document somewhere that will have links to the audio for sure of every audio podcast you've ever been on.
They're not all good, but some of them are.
But also
it's
and
honestly,
then videos. There's less because some of those platforms aren't around anymore, so they go away.
Oh right.
But we do have them all. John's actually been curating that list since before he started with StrongFit, by the way.
Right, I know, because he's that crazy. Exactly.
So
that's
bless John. One of us got to be organized.
Yeah.
So we've got, but that's that stuff. StrongFit.com, StrongFitEquipment.com. At the equipment place, you can get sandbags. If you are holed up in your place, sand in a bag is pretty easy and pretty useful. More affordable.
We're not telling you to steal the sand from the playground or anything like that, but allegedly there's some at the beach that worked really well.
Those kids shouldn't be playing on the playground nowadays anyways.
We should do that as a public service. Let's take the sand away from the playgrounds and put them into sandbags to make sure that those kids stay home and safe.
Yes, you heard it here
This
first.
is a safety announcement.
Yes.
Take the sand away from the playground. Just don't put the shit into the bag.
I don't know, what am I missing, Julien? Manta Fitness for stuff in Australia for the apparel and sandbags. Julien's on Instagram at StrongFit1. Richard's at Rare Barracuda. I'm Tyler F. and Stone. If I missed anything else, it's going to be in
We're
the
getting more training videos. Because I'm forcing Tyler to train and film everything. I'll help you more on the next one, I promise. But so we'll have...
no problem with training or filming. Here's what you guys
exactly. Notice. It's both that becomes a problem.
You know what makes it hard? Actually, the real thing that makes it hard? I can get around. I can get the shot done. I can get back to training. I can do the thing. Is in editing the video, I have to listen to myself after I finish doing any exercise. I'm going... I'm just like... you know what I mean? I'm just like fat guy, top of the stairs.
By the way, we need to take video of you training too. Because there's only me and Richard.
We have some. I have some.
Yeah. No, but so we can.
I'm trying not to be too gratuitous.
Yeah, exactly. We no, but those are good because I posted one this morning about me struggling on the legless rope pull.
By the way, there was one too. I remember when we were doing the logs from the template from the functional integration template is in the bottom of the thing too. We were doing the log workout from the template where it was basically just competition training. It was 1 minute max reps from the floor, so clean and press with the log. And I hadn't done any timed event style, full body stuff like that in a while. And I went into that session with the upper neoprene at least from the waist up on, including the biceps.
And that was a mistake.
Well, we did 2 of them. So we built up and then
forced them to do 2.
I did the first one in the neoprene and I got only 1 rep more than I did without the neoprene for the second one. Except the difference was during that first one, if 40 seconds in you would have said, Tyler, we can put a bullet in your head right now and end this, I would have been like, fucking just do it. And then the second one, I literally 1 rep less, and muscles were tired too.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
It was muscle fatigue by the second.
Because we took only 3-4 minute rest, so the second one was rough.
But
the neoprene for 1 minute.
But without the neoprene, then I was like, oh. So I actually have this theory that I want to do is sometime before a fun competition I don't have to take too seriously, I want to do my actual event, where you're doing your last few sessions where you're basically simulating the event. And where I want to do that with the neoprene and then only use the neoprene, literally the waist and stuff, to be warm and activated before I start, but then strip it off and go for the competition. And I would feel like I would feel lighter and more excellent. But what it is, your lungs, you're in that state. It's so... You
don't understand how what the neoprene does to you, but mentally, oh my God.
I'll put it up. By the time you're hearing this, you probably will have seen it. But the first bit, the first minute, I look like a man who's being tortured. The second minute, I look like a man who's being tortured, but like is used to it.
You know what my favorite part is every time you do those things is the second you finish, you look at me
I'm done.
with those eyes of you motherfucker.
Mad.
Why would
Mad.
you make me do this?
Somebody
every
has to
time
be...
he has those eyes where I'm like, I'm not scared, but
you'll see like one of my major like flaws. I see things from a systematic standpoint.
Yeah.
So I'm in a lot of pain. Let's go to the fucking cause.
Yeah. Me, yeah,
Like
exactly.
It's pretty easy for me to point like, what was your idea?
Exactly.
You had me come
Especially
here.
2 sets.
You made up the neoprene thing.
Exactly.
Like all of
you
the
made
things
up the
that I'm
workout. Yeah, exactly.
feeling, right? It's either you or it's
because
because
normally it's no neoprene 3 reps,
Yeah.
and then
it's either you is the reason I'm feeling miserable, or it's me for not telling you no, I don't want to do any of this. And
in either
and
case,
won't
I
blame
get the look.
myself. Yeah.
Either case, I get the look.
So, but thanks a lot for listening, everybody. We have a lot new stuff coming up all over everywhere. So
Yeah.
we'll see you next week.
And we'll have more
see you in a few days.
Cooking show. We'll do an ebook with Richard. There'll be a bunch of stuff.
Tons of stuff. Thanks for watching.